my studio where all the sewing magic happens, including this and that. There are videos showing you how to make these. This is actually an unreleased pattern because I create patterns that you can print out on your own home printer, paste together, and create a dress of your own.
Made by you.
One of a kind.
I'm Lydia, and I create sewing and pattern tutorials for you all. Right now we're disrespectful. And welcome to my studio. First of all, aren't you gorgeous? When you're I also create patterns that you can download and print and create your own wonderful garments, so check that out below. Today I'm really excited to share with you one of my favorite sleeves of all time since I encountered it in fashion school. The lantern sleeve. I love the simplistic yet architectural silhouette of this sleeve. I think that it's actually a very timeless statement sleeve, and I'm excited to show you how to draft it and sew it today. If you enjoy this video, support me and give me a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more. And without further ado, let's get started. To create the lantern sleeve, we'll be slashing and spreading to create fullness on the upper and lower portion of the sleeve where they meet. This gives it that architectural trapezoidal shape. So get your sleeve block or pattern, some pattern paper, a pencil, clear ruler, tape, and scissors, and let's draft this sleeve. You can start with a sleeve block like this one. It's a basic pattern template without seam allowance from which you can create all kinds of patterns. Or you can just use an existing plain sleeve pattern. Start by tracing out your sleeve block, transferring all the markings to your pattern paper. I needed to lower the armhole of my sleeve because I lowered my bodice armhole as well. I adjusted the length of the sleeve to elbow length, so that's 14 inches for me. Then since this is a shaped sleeve, I altered it to make it more square. Make sure the hem of your sleeve is the width you want it to be. Mine would rest at my elbow, so I took the measurement for this and added at least 2 inches for ease. I don't want it to fit tight on my elbow. I actually ended up leaving it square from the armhole all the way to the hem. Next, decide how high you want the lower half of the sleeve to be. I decided on 4 inches, and after testing it, I liked it a lot, so I marked a line 4 inches from the hem. This is where we will separate the top half of the sleeve from the bottom half to create the lantern shape. But before we separate them, we need to section them evenly. We only need to section the center area of the sleeve, as we do not need to add fullness to the underarm areas, which will lay against your body. Between the curved parts of the sleeve, create 8 even sections top to bottom. Now cut out your sleeve because it's time to slash and spread. First, separate the top section from the bottom section. For the bottom portion, cut from the top to the hem, leaving a tiny portion of the paper intact. On a new piece of paper, draw a line down the center. This will be your grain line. Center your cutout pieces over this grain line as shown. They should be at least 2 inches distance from one another so that we can add seam allowance later. Tape down one of the center pieces of each piece and start by spreading your pieces, fanning out from the center. I started the first spread only a ½ inch since I will spread the other side a ½ inch as well to create that full 1 inch. Taping it in place as I go. Do this to both the top and bottom portion of the sleeve. Trace around your new shapes and smooth out any jagged edges as you do so. Add center notches to the top and bottom of the bottom portion and to the bottom of the top portion and label them as shown. Don't forget to mark the grain line as well. Then go ahead and add your seam allowance. I usually go with 3/8 of an inch or a ½ inch all the way around. Whatever you choose, make sure that you transfer the notches to the outer edge of your added seam allowance. Cut these pieces out and label them as shown, and now you have your lantern sleeve all ready to cut and sew. Make sure you pre-wash and iron your fabric. You really don't want your garments to end up shrinking after the first wash and all your hard work having gone to waste. So definitely don't skip that step. Cut the sleeve top portion twice and remember to snip the notches so that you know where to match it to the bottom portion and to the armhole of your garment. You are going to cut the bottom portion 4 times so that we can face it. I think it's much easier to face than baby hem or bias finish it, although those are great options as well. It's really up to you. Start by overlocking or zigzagging the cap and sides of the sleeve top portion. Sew up the sides of your 2 sleeve top portions with right sides facing. Make sure you also press open the seams, because pressing always makes a garment look that much more professional, so definitely don't skip that. Next, sew all 4 of your sleeve bottom side seams. There should be 4 separate seams and you'll end up with 4 cone shapes. Press open those seams and then pair them right sides together so that the center notches and seams are matching and the seam allowances are facing out. Trim the seam allowance down to about 1/4 inch and clip it so that it will turn out cleanly. When you turn it out, you can understitch by pushing the seam allowance to the sleeve facing side and stitch close to the seam. This creates a nice crisp finish and also makes it easier to press. Now with right sides of the top and bottom sleeve facing, sew up what I will call the lantern seam. Then finish by overlocking. And when you turn it out, you are going to see this lovely lantern shape. For a nice crisp look, you can push the seam allowance up and top stitch it to the sleeve top portion. And I find that a tailor's ham comes in handy for pressing the curve of the lantern seam if you have one. The sleeve is almost ready to insert into the armhole of your garment, but first I need to sew a basting stitch to the sleeve cap between the notches. This is because my sleeve has cap ease, and this step will help me sew it in without puckers. So I increase my stitch length to its highest and stitch around the cap. Then slightly gather the cap so that it curls in. I sewed up the rest of the dress. It's a new design that I drafted that is inspired by the gathered cutouts I've been seeing on Pinterest, and I'm really excited to see how it looks. It is my very first draft, so I'm sure there will have to be tweaks made to the pattern, but if you're interested in seeing the pattern in my Etsy shop, definitely comment below and let me know. Now that we have a fully assembled armhole as part of this dress, it's time to insert the sleeve. When you match your sleeve to its armhole, make sure that the front single notch is at the front and the double notch at the back. Pin together the underarm seams and then move up the front and the back, pinning in place. The ease will all be pushed toward the top of the armhole. Make sure that you match the center notch of the sleeve to the shoulder seam of the armhole. Then just evenly distribute the gathers and pin in place. To make sure no gathers make it into the seam, sew your seam with the armhole on top and the sleeve underneath, checking as you sew to even out the gathers. Start sewing near the front or back notch and sew all the way around. You may end up sewing in some puckers like I did and had to fix, so just be careful. When your sleeve is done, you should have no pucker sewn into the cap, and you can use a tailor's ham or a sleeve iron board to press your finished seam. And that's it, the lantern sleeve in all its glory.